People often ask, how much money do I need to keep in a primary reserve? A primary reserve is typically cash on hand in a checking or savings account or equivalent holdings such as a money market account. By primary reserve, we mean resources that have two basic characteristics. They're accessible at any point in time without penalty, and they have no potential for loss. Now, this is important because we want to be wise as stewards of the resources that we have. We want to make sure that we have enough here so that when an unexpected expense arises, we can cover it. We want to have enough in a primary reserve so that we sleep at night. We have a margin of safety that we can tap into at a moment's notice. At the same time, the rate of return on resources in these types of accounts tends to be very modest. Ideally, we don't want to keep too much in this type of an account because these types of accounts typically lag in terms of returns relative to inflation. This seemingly simple question has a bit of complexity as each individual and family unit look at things differently too. There's no one-size-fits-all solution that we would recommend. Now, if you were to search the internet for how much money do I need to have set aside in my bank account, the general guideline is 3 to 6 months of non-discretionary spending, things that you will have to spend money on every month, such as your housing costs, food, and other debts, plus any unusually large one-time expenditures that you've planned on in the next year. So let's take a quick look at the math on this just to clarify what we mean. Assume that you generally spend about $10,000 per month with no planned big expenditures on the horizon. Well, the guideline would be that you need between $30,000 and $60,000 of easily accessible cash on hand. However, this is where you can't force a square peg into a round hole. Let's take two different situations to see how this works out for different couples. For the first couple, who is currently retired, they have Social Security income and pension income that's currently covering their monthly needs. They have an additional $1 million in combined investment accounts. They live in a condo with no mortgage, they have low utilities, and maintenance needs are fairly minimal. They have no outstanding debt and live rather simply. Now, I would argue that that couple doesn't need a huge primary reserve. They might be on the smaller side of things, maybe 3 months of living expenses cash on hand. On the other hand, consider a couple whose primary breadwinner is a consultant who plans to retire in 5 years or so at the age of 60, and neither of whom has a pension or intends to draw Social Security for several years to come. Similarly, they have significant investment assets just like that first couple, and they're projected to have resources that support their lifestyles. The second couple, while currently secure, faces more inherent risks than the other couple. If the primary income earner loses his or her job, it could be more difficult to find work at an older age. If they need to withdraw from their investments sooner than anticipated, that could put constraints on their financial plan later in life. For this couple, 6 months of expenses is likely a better starting point to keep in that primary reserve. And we might even argue that trying to build a reserve closer to 1 year's worth of living expenses might make more sense, depending on how much their consulting income fluctuates. As you can see in these two situations, despite the couples having similar ages and retirement savings, the amount that would be prudent to keep in cash is vastly different. Now, if you have a large expenditure planned in the next year, considering how to raise cash either through a distribution or some other means is important. As an example, let's say that you inherited $500,000 and would like to buy a home in the mountains. You'd like to do so without a mortgage, let's just assume. You'd like to make that mountain home purchase in the next year, but you aren't sure when. Rather than investing those resources in stocks or bonds for a short period of time, we generally encourage folks to keep the inheritance like that in cash because the short time horizon and likelihood that stock and bond prices will fluctuate may lead to poor outcomes. We believe that comprehensive financial planning with a professional is a fantastic way to help you arrive at that number that you need in a primary reserve. We can think critically and unemotionally and give you guidance that is pertinent to you. So if you'd like more information or to discuss this in greater detail, please call our office and we'll be happy to schedule a time to discuss it with you further.
This content was provided by Retirement Planning Services. We're in Knoxville, Tennessee, and you can visit our website at www.seriousretirement.com. The information in this recording is intended for general educational and informational purposes only and should not be construed as investment advisory, financial planning, legal, tax, or other professional advice based on your specific situation. Please consult with your professional advisor before taking any action based on its contents.